Everybody? It's the Digital World Podcast, and man, is there a lot of news that I'm not going to be able to cover today because I have an appointment for something else later this evening. But this is the big one that I want to talk about, and tomorrow I'll go ahead and make some videos in regards to other news that are actually circulating now that have to do with the White House setting up walls, um, um, scarcity and the supplies. You see it in a lot of grocery stores, but that will be some of the topics I'll probably cover tomorrow. So, anyways, here the Supreme Court has blocked Biden's OSHA medicine mandate. Now, this is good news considering what has been happening. But let me give you the flip side of things. I don't want to just give you surface level things, right? Let's dig a little deeper. Okay? So here, despite the misinformation that, the Justice Sotomayor displayed or said in the hearing, the Supreme Court has blocked the administration's medicine or test rule for U.S. businesses, but allows the mandate for most healthcare workers. See the NFIB argue against the Department of Labor in the court's first hearing that OSHA's sweeping regulatory dictate will irreparably injure the very businesses that Americans have counted on to widely distribute these medicines and protective equipment to save lives and to keep them fed, clothed, and sustained during this now 2-year-long pandemic. Okay? Now, here it says OSHA would have required 80 million workers, that's in the private industry, to get these medicines, right? And the ruling was 6-3, which Breyer, Sotomayor, and Kagan were in dissent, so they voted against it. Okay. Now, permitting OSHA to regulate the hazards of daily life simply because most Americans have jobs and face those same risks while on the clock would significantly expand OSHA's regulatory authority without clear congressional authorization. And then we see here that Chief Justice John Roberts, appointed by Bush, said it's hard to argue that the 70 law governing OSHA gives free rein to the agencies to enact such broad regulation. However, the court allowed a separate rule to take effect requiring shots for workers in nursing homes, hospitals, and other facilities that receive Medicare and Medicaid payments from the federal government. Now, this is the kicker here. We see that Newsom in California has advocated for a lot of its residents to get onto this type of health care. And one interesting thing, when you look at this, Obama, he started the whole Medicare, Medicaid thing during his term. And I'm curious that if people are on that kind of government healthcare system, in order for them to receive any type of healthcare, right, they're going to have to receive some kind of jab. And one of the things that I'm noticing is that any private business or any entity for that matter associated with federal funding is going to enforce this mandate. And it's a trend that I've been seeing more, and a lot of what has happened in the past, decade or so makes sense in terms of where they're steering, in what direction they're steering. And that's interesting because there was this article that was written by, I think her name's Matsukato. It's she's I think she's part of the World Economic Forum or something like that. There's an article she wrote in which, or actually a book, in which she calls it the entrepreneurial state. So essentially, all businesses that are run are no longer, private from the private sector, but they become businesses that receive money, federal funding from the government. And so they're essentially run either by the state or by the government, or state government or federal government, either or. And that people will compete for government contracts as opposed to what we have today, because the money will lie in those government contracts. So when you see something like that and you see where all these trends are going, you start to see that the more and more federal funding entities get, the more they'll have to comply with whatever the government's requiring. So, yes, this is a major victory. But keep your eyes, because, like I said, folks, this is tyranny or revolution. You can't just all of a sudden stop and declare, oh, that's it, we're done, we're stopping, and not expect people to be upset at what has happened over the past 2 years, right? There has to be some kind of change. So while we can enjoy this victory and this time of our freedom, I think there's things you got to keep your eyes on. Don't let your guard down. And a lot of this, will tie into what's going on at the White House. Why are they putting up, I believe, concrete walls around the White House? And that's a topic I'll probably cover tomorrow. But I'm telling you, something's coming down the pipeline. And while we have these freedoms, this moment in time of freedom, let's cherish in it and be prepared and not waste any moments, because I think what's coming down the pipeline is a lot worse. And like I've said before, this is just the beginning. You think all those supply shortages, all those countries that are way ahead in terms of their medicine mandates, they're just all of a sudden going to stop just because of this ruling? No, they're different countries. Canada, look at what's happening in Canada, Australia. Folks, enjoy the freedom. This is a victory. But don't get comfortable. Keep preparing, because someone's got to pay the piper. You can't just print all this money and not expect repercussions, right? There's no free lunch. And we see what's happening with these tax laws. So be prepared. Use this time of granted freedom to, I don't know how else to put it, but use it to keep preparing. And but nevertheless, I'll do some more updates tomorrow, because that's going to be some interesting stuff to cover. Without further ado, this is the Digital World Podcast, and I'll see you in the next episode.